All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is just a quick video record of today's lesson. You're going to find your homework at the very end, so do not forget to get all the way to the end. So let's go ahead and get ourselves started, shall we? Let's go ahead and make our screen full screen. We don't like seeing all these extra stuff here at the top. All right, so this was a problem we didn't get a chance to touch on today because we had our quiz. For number 4, it says, select all the expressions that are equivalent to a negative 2 times 5x minus 1 plus 7 times 5x minus 1 minus 3 times a negative 5x plus 1. All right, so what we have here is 3 separate individual terms. So we need to work these out and solve each individual term and then combine at the end. So here we go. Let's go with blue, shall we? All right. So when I say 3 individual terms, I mean this here is a term right here. Then this 7 and that becomes a term. And then the negative 3 here goes with this as a term. So we have to use the distribute property. Now, you're not sure if you remember, but the distribute property basically says that if I take the number that's on the outside and multiply it by each number on the inside of a set of parentheses, I can get rid of the parentheses. So I got a negative 2 times 5x. So negative 2 times 5 is going to give me a negative 10x. Minus, okay, so minus 1, or a negative 2 times a negative 1 gives me a positive 2. Now you see why I put that plus 7 in the front. Now it's a positive 7. 7 times 5x is a 35x. 7 times a negative 1 is a negative 7. And then I got a negative 3 times the negative 5x times the positive 1. So a negative 3 times a negative 5x gives me a positive 15x, and a negative 3 times a positive 1 gives me a negative 3. Now it comes time for me to do a little bit of simplifying. Let's go ahead and group everything together that's alike. So I've got 35x, I've got 15x, and then I got a negative 10x. And then I've got 2, a negative 7, and a negative 3. So what does this simplify to? Well, 35 plus 15 gives me 50. So 50x minus 10x gives me 40x. Do I have anything that says 40x? I do. I got 40x minus 8. So it looks like that V is not going to be one of those that might work. Okay. Now let's see. We got 2 minus 7 is a negative 5. A negative 5 minus 3 is a negative 8. So all this gives me a negative 8. So 40x minus 8 is going to be one of the answers. But it does say select all that applies. So T is only one of the answers. Now let's see if we can match up. So a negative 10x plus 2 matches here. 35x minus 7 matches here. And 15x minus 3, oh, wait a minute. That says minus 15x. Everything else seemed to have matched up until I got to that minus 15x. So can I say that these expressions are equivalent? I can't. So this can't be the right answer. So now I'm down to 3 other options. Negative 10x minus 1. Now let's see. A negative 1 minus 1 minus 1 plus 1 does not give me a negative 8. So M cannot be it. Okay, so now it's saying 5x minus 1 times a negative 2 plus 7 minus 3. That's an interesting problem. If I multiply everything inside there by a negative 1, or I factor out a negative 1, it's about positive 3 on the outside. So based on what I'm seeing, this will not be 1, but S will be. And now if you want to know why I'm saying S, come to me tomorrow morning and ask. If you ask me why S is one of the chosen answers, I'll give you bonus points when we come up with the right solution. Okay? So let's jump into our interest problems. So we've got to find the simple interest, use the following formula. Interest equals principal times the rate times the time. Or I equals P times R times T, and then the third one is another way of writing it. Where R is the percent of the principal that is paid over a period of time. R is normally going to be your percents. So R will most likely be a percent. T is time. T has got to be represented over years. Okay, so R and T must be compatible. For example, if R is an annual interest rate, then T must be written in years. Okay, So in other words, it means compatible. Like you may have semi-annual, which means every 6 months. So time might have to be written in 6 months or a half a year. Depending on how you want to write it, they just got to be compatible with each other. All right, so example number 1. Larry invests $100 in a savings plan. The plan pays 4.5% each year on his $100 account balance. How much money will Larry earn in interest after 3 years and after 5 years? So this tells me that I'm looking at 2 different problems. I need to remember this because it's asking me after 3 years and after 5 years. But the first thing you should always do in every problem that's dealing with interest, go ahead and label the variables. I, P, R, T. What do these equal? What are these going to be represented as in the problem? So Larry invests $100 in a savings plan. So that means Larry's starting off with $100. That $100 is the principal. Okay? The plan pays 4.5% interest each year. That 4.5% is going to be our rate. Okay? 4.5% is the same as 4.5%, which is the same as 0.045. All right, and then T, what is our T? Well, how much money will Larry earn in interest after 3 years and 5 years? So I'm solving for 2 separate problems here. So let's extend this page a little bit. Okay, so I know what my formula is. I equals P times R times T. So I is, we don't know I, so that's I equals, we know our principal is 100, our rate is 0.045, and our time is going to be 3 years. So 100 times 0.045 times 3. If we go ahead and put that in a calculator real quick, 100 times 0.045 times 3 gives me 13.5. So my interest for 3 years was $13.50. Mr. Hale, why is it $13.50 if you found 13.5 in the calculator? Because interest is in dollars. Okay. If we're working with dollars as the principal balance, then the interest is going to be in dollars as well. Okay, so the next part says 5 years. So we're going to use the same formula, but instead we're going to sit here and we are going to use 5 years instead of 3 years. So 100 times 0.045, let's make sure we get that point in there, times 5 instead. So 100 times 0.045 times 5 gives me 22.5. So 22.5 is going to be my answer, or that's $22.50. Okay? Now, yes, I know this is interesting. It's a little tough. Okay? We're talking about formulas and we're talking about multiple answers, but I promise you this gets easier as we go along, so do not get yourself overwhelmed. All right? Let's look at question 3. Find the balance of a savings account at the end of 10 years if the interest earned each year is 7.5%. The principal is $500. So we need to label our parts. I, P, R, T. Do we know our interest? No, it says find the balance of a savings account. So we don't know at the end of 10 years. Excuse me, I'm sorry. So we don't know what the interest is. But it tells me the principal is $500. It tells me my rate is 7.5%. And it tells me my time is 10 years. So if that's what I'm trying to find is my interest, then I've got my formula. All I have to do is substitute. I equals PRT. So I equals, the principal is 500. The rate is 7.5% or 0.075, and our time is 10 years. So if we put all that in a calculator and we find out our answer, you should get an answer of $375. So after 10 years, it should be $375 in interest. But we can double check. 500 times 0.075 times 10 gives me $375. Okay? This is how you would find it if you're looking for the interest. But there are 3 other formulas where we may be finding something else. We may be looking for time. If they're going to ask us how long it takes for something to happen, it's probably going to be T equals I divided by P times R, which I'll show you these formulas at the very end of the slide. Finding principal, when we try to find the principal, that would be P equals the interest divided by rate times time. And if you're trying to find the rate, you would take the interest and divide it by the principal times the time. And we'll hopefully get to use some of those here in a few minutes. All right, so now I've got a $1,000 savings bond that earns simple interest at the rate of 3% each year. The interest is paid at the end of every month. How much interest will the bond have after 3 months? Okay, so now we're looking at a situation where we no longer have years given to us. Now we got time. Well, time provides us a different scenario. Okay, so we need to be very careful because we want to make sure we use the right measurements. Okay, so we have a simple interest rate, and it says 3% each year. So if the rate's in years, our time has to be in years as well. So we must maintain compatibility. So we might need to do a little bit of conversions here. So we're still going to use the formula I equals PRT. So let's just be careful. Do I know the interest? No. It says how much interest. So I don't know that. But I know the principal. The principal is $1,000. It's a $1,000 savings bond. The rates, remember, the rates always are percent. It tells us it's 3%. But the time says 3 months. If I'm working with years, it needs to be years. So how do I convert months to years? Well, that's easy. How many months do we have in a year? We have 12. How many months are we working with? 3. There you go. So 3 months is 3/12 of a year, or if you simplified it, it's 1/4. Now 1/4 as a decimal, because decimals are so much easier to work with, is 0.25. So our time is 0.25 years. So you plug it in the calculator and we come up with our solution. So, well, I guess we got to set up the formula first. I equals PRT, where I equals 1,000 times 0.03 times 0.25. So 1,000 times 0.03 times 0.25 gives me 7.5. So the interest after 3 months was $7.50. So basically this young man would have accumulated 4 times that, or about $30 over the course of a full year. But we aren't worried about a year, we were just worried about 3 months. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so Mrs. Williams wants to know how long it'll take an investment of $450 to earn $200 in interest if the yearly interest rate is 6.5% paid at the end of each year. Okay, so we've got Mrs. Williams here. She knows how much her principal balance was. She knows what her interest is, and she knows what her rate is, but she doesn't know how long. We don't know the time. So remember what I told you. We got a formula to find interest. It's principal times the rate times the time. But what is if we want to find time? Well, time is just if we do a little bit of manipulation. We take the P and the R and we move it over here. This is multiplication, so we'd end up having to divide. So we'd get interest divided by P times R. So that's how you find time. You take the interest and divide it by the principal times the rate. So let's find out what our principal and rate and interest are. Well, we want to know how long it would take to earn an interest of $200. We know our principal, or what she started off with, was $450. And we know her rate is going to be at 6.5%. So we don't know time. That is what we don't know. So we're going to use this formula right here. Okay? So let's do a little bit of substituting, and let's go ahead and start working it out. So time equals the interest, which is 200, divided by 450 times 0.065. Now, I'm giving you fair warning. If you're going to type this into a calculator to try to solve it, make sure you type it in just like this. 200, okay, divided by, open parentheses, 450 times 0.065, close parentheses, and then press enter. That'll give you the correct answer. If you leave off the parentheses, you're going to end up getting an answer that is completely off. So 200 divided by, open parentheses, 450 times 0.065, close parentheses, you should get an answer where T is 6.8 years. Okay? That would be the answer you get. But the problem, you got to read the problem. It says the interest rate is paid at the end of each year. We aren't at the end of the year yet. It was 6.8. So technically, she'll get to 200 before the end of the 7 years, but her rate only pays out after 7 years. So that's our answer. That's how much time would pass, 7 years. Okay? All right. Let's extend this. We're going to do exercise 3. So a $1,500 loan has an annual interest rate of 4.25% on the amount borrowed. How much time has elapsed if the interest is now $127.50? So again, we need to go ahead and label our I, P, R, and T. Our interest is $127.50. Our principal was what the loan was originally for, $1,500. Our rate is 4.25%. So again, we don't know how much time has passed. So we know what the formula is. T equals the interest divided by the rate times the time. Or sorry, not that. T equals the interest times the principal times the rate. Okay? So our time equals $127.50 divided by 1,500 times 0.0425. That's how we find our answer. So we're going to plug this in. 127.5 divided by, open parentheses, 1,500 times 0.0425, close parentheses. You should get a time of 2 years. That's how much time has passed in order for that amount of interest to accrue. Okay. So that's all there was. That's all your work is today. That's all we were going to work on. So let's go ahead and assign you your homework. For those that were in class in 7.1, you know what your homework is. For those in 7.2 and 7.3, you don't. So what I want you to do is you're going to go to Lesson 9. Yes, we're in Lesson 10. I understand that. But Lesson 9, I want you to do numbers 1 and 3. And then in Lesson 10, which is the lesson we just finished, I want you to do numbers 1, 2, 3A, and 3B. Okay, so that's just numbers 1 and 3 in Lesson 9, and that's numbers 1, 2, and then parts A and B in number 3. And that's your homework. Okay? I will not be here in the second half of the day tomorrow. You will have a video to finish watching in class. But if I am here, I expect to see this homework. You are going to get a grade for it. All right, you guys. You have yourselves a wonderful evening. I will see you bright and early tomorrow morning for those that I will have class with. Oh, and by the way, okay.